Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast. Today, I am flying solo, and it's always my mission when I do my solo podcasts to, of course, share personal anecdote, but also to ensure that I'm offering you value on these podcasts. And often when I do the solo ones, I think about what I'm going to talk about a lot, because it's super important to me. You listening to the podcast and tuning in is a commitment from you to gain something from every single episode that I release, because time is so precious to us all. And when you're looking at different podcasts and committing to the podcast host, you're often looking to gain something from that. And it's often education, empowerment, maybe to resonate with someone. So let's make that clear. This is always my mission. And today we're going to be talking about checking in with yourself, something that we can often forget to do because, let's face it, life is busy. There's lots of things that go on in the day-to-day life that we get wrapped up in. Things happen, challenges come our way, and it's very easy to forget about how you are putting yourself across as a person, and are you leading towards the things that are important to you. And that goes beyond your goals, whether that's physique development, whether that's mindset. It's also about making sure you're acting with morals that are true to you, and also being authentic. Now, this is something I know some of you guys that listen find it hard to be truly authentic. And it's certainly something I've struggled with myself. It's not easy to be truly yourself in a world full of pressures. And we are often exposed to external pressures, whether that's social media, people we spend time with, maybe in the workplace, maybe even at the gym that you train at. We can be led by certain people's mythologies, their idealistic approaches, but is that true to you and your morals as a person? And that's a question that I often ask myself. And when starting the podcast, it took me over 6 months of deliberating, could this actually be a thing? Is my knowledge as a competitor and a coach going to bring something to our community? And that is super important to me. And when we talk about checking in with ourselves, this for me, starting this podcast, I made a promise to myself and you guys when you weren't even listeners. And that promise was to show up every single week. Every Monday, without fail, you have had a podcast from me and from a multitude of guests. And that was something that before I launched was a non-negotiable. It was very, very serious to me. And also, was I in a spot where I could be completely open and honest? Was I in a spot where I could explore vulnerability? Because when you're listening to a podcast, depending on what the outcome you're looking for is, you want to be able to resonate, like I said right at the start. And I'm never going to say that I don't struggle with things, because that is not my vibe. As you guys know, if you listen to the podcast, actually sharing my struggles, sharing what I've come across as a competitor and a person, I believe can really help my listeners. And that is a gift, because I can bridge the gap between you feeling alone and you feeling that you have someone that has maybe been through similar struggles. And it is always, always my priority to give you a voice, because for the 12 years of being a competitor, I have experienced times of feeling extremely alone, because what we face on a day-to-day basis, to people outside of bodybuilding, maybe they don't get that. And it's hard sometimes, because it can be such small things and we can really be quite detrimental to ourselves for our own internal self-talk. And then maybe we put that on other people also if we are struggling. So in today's episode, I am going to be talking about how we can check in with ourselves, how we can challenge our ego, what we can look for in relationships, and lots of other things that I'm going to cover, including some light bulb moments I've had recently and conversations I've had with my people. I'd love to share them with you guys because I've certainly found that I'm now in a place in life where the people I invest energies into, yes, sometimes I get it wrong and maybe, you know, people take from me and that's not reciprocated, but that's okay. You know, the people that I do have that I find is a two-way relationship, it's worth it. You know, sometimes we've got to try, maybe we see something in someone and we go all in, and that's maybe, you know, like I say, not reciprocated, or you can often feel like, wow, I've invested a lot of time into someone and they haven't really shown that back, or maybe they've moved on to other things in their life, and that is not your fault. But what I would say is that if you see something in someone and you want to invest energies into that relationship, then it's worth a try, right? You know, for me, it's different if you're looking at who you're spending your life with your intimate partner. But friendships, sometimes we do get it wrong, and that is okay. But it is, you've got to dig down on your intuition, and it is your priority as a person to look after yourself. So if you see red flags, if you feel something isn't right, gravitating away from people, that's your own self-respect. Now, that's not easy, but of course, it is something that is important to be able to protect your own vibe for sure. So I'm going to start with a saying that we all know very, very well. Actions speak louder than words. Now, my first part that I want to sort of dig into here is every single person has a unique way of viewing and taking on information. So when I say actions speak louder than words, this could mean a multitude of things to a multitude of different people. And for me, I found certainly when I reflect as a person that I do take it very, very literally. So if someone, whether that's a friend, a client, a family member, whoever that may be, if someone says something to me, I'm going to take that on face value. And for me, that then has led to parting of ways with certain people, should we say. That's probably the best way to say it. I found it difficult myself to make lifelong true friendships, because for me, if a friend says something, I want to ask about that. I want to challenge that, not in a way to be a dickhead, but in a way to understand this person. If I'm investing into someone, I want to understand them. For me, that's a priority as a human being. I've got this far in life with facing many, many challenges and facing many, many relationships that have parted. And I don't want to invest in people that are not able to be open and honest with me. That's just how I want to operate. Now, if I challenge someone, if I ask someone a question, I'm doing that from a place of true intention. And for you guys listening, when you're looking at relationships, when you're looking to invest time in people, it's important that you're looking to do this from a place of good intention. And if something doesn't sit right, if we don't challenge that, if we don't ask questions, this can build resentment. And this is in any relationship, even in a work scenario, right? If you're being asked to do something and you don't understand why, or it doesn't sit well with you, if you just do that, you're not only not being true to yourself, but over time, you're going to resent that person or that company or that scenario. And resentment, let me tell you, it is a fucker, because it's very, very hard to let that go. If any relationship or scenario starts with that type of feeling, it is very hard to come back from that. Now, that's not me saying that we can't work through things in relationships. Potentially, we can understand that person, why they've maybe acted in a certain way or said something, and we can build that bridge together. But if you don't ask the questions, if you don't have a voice, then you are going to end up feeling certain ways towards other people. And that does not help your vibe of being authentic to yourself. And this comes back to a level of self-respect. So like I say, when someone says something, I've always felt like, well, you're then going to follow through. And that's pretty black and white, right? And life is not black and white. There is certainly gray areas, but it's very hard for me to understand why someone would say something and then not follow through with it. But then if I can ask questions and understand it, and that makes sense, and I'm able to talk to friends, colleagues, clients, etc. about this, it certainly does help to continue that level of respect that I feel we want to have mutual respect in any relationship, right? And this brings me on to talking about someone that has recently come into my life. And Tamara, you listen to the podcast, you are an absolute angel, a shining light in my life. And I'm going to talk about Tamara, who found me through the podcast. And I'm going to talk about what Tamara has done for me and how this has helped me realize my own self-value. Because Tamara won't know that I'm going to talk about her on the podcast today. But I feel like a lot of people listening can learn from having this type of person in your life and what that can bring. So for me, Tamara messaged off the back of finding the podcast, and as some of you guys do, binged on many episodes and really found a lot of education, empowerment, and a voice through listening to my podcast. And like I said right at the start, that is my mission. I'm here to help you guys. This is all I could ever want from being your podcast host. So Tamara comes into my messages on Instagram and I see she's an IFBB Elite Pro. So instantly I'm in awe that someone has messaged me off the back of the podcast and crediting the podcast for so much and crediting me as the person I am. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I feel like this with all of the messages I receive from the podcast for sure. But the reason I want to talk about this as an example is I then felt, and Tamara's going to be listening going, what? Because she's a very humble person. I thought, this person is above me, right? Now, why did I think that? And this is where I want to expand. An IFBB Elite Pro. So this isn't someone that's got a pro card and, achieved that and that's that. She's pursued the IFBB Pro League. And I know from digging down on why I would view Tamara as above me, I know it's because I know what it takes to get a pro card and then compete as a pro. It's not something that you can do half-assed generally. And I realize that my assumption from what Tamara has achieved and continues to achieve then made me feel that she is elite, she's an elite IFBB pro. Then talking more and more to Tamara and speaking to her about her achievements in the sport and getting to know her as a person and what she brings back to me of how much value I've brought to her life, I realize that we are both equal in this relationship that has formed through the podcast. And this really did dawn on me that if you have the right people in your life, you are equal. And what I also realize is that Tamara has reminded me the value I can bring to you guys through listening to the podcast. And this is something for sure. Spoke about it on this week's podcast on Monday with Will, that many of us will suffer with. Imposter syndrome, right? And what is imposter syndrome? What does that even mean? And it's often that you don't realize your own value, your self-value. Now, really, I know that I can bring a lot to the podcast, my social media, my clients, my friends, but I do have moments where I sometimes feel that maybe, are people receiving the information I share in the right light? Can I do better? Can I progress in any way? Can I grow in any way as a human to offer more and be more relatable, or maybe reach more people? So I wouldn't say the imposter syndrome for me is negative self-talk per se, more of a consideration to how can I be better? So Tamara, I know you're going to be listening to this. Thank you for coming into my life and being that bright light of authenticity, of value, of being a fucking epic human. And I really do see what you put into this sport. And I see that you do this for the right reasons. And like I said, Tamara is so humble. And this is someone that you want to look at if you want to look at a pro athlete. Her physique is fucking phenomenal, and she's a fucking phenomenal human. And this is something that I look for in people, being a true person with morals, with values. And when we praise each other, it's not from a place of licking each other's arse. It's not from a place of trying to feed into each other's ego. It's because we genuinely have hit it off and we have found the vibe. So thank you, Tamara, for what you have brought into my life. And the reason I share, like I say, this story is because when you feel equality in a relationship, when you feel this is reciprocated and that you see someone pour energy into something they're passionate about, that's a very attractive trait. It's something that really does pique my intrigue in people when they're passionate about something. And yes, Tamara is an elite IFBB pro. But when I see passion in anyone from any walk of life, this could be someone that works in Iceland. That doesn't matter. If they're passionate about something, this is something that really does draw me towards people. And also being humble. This is so important, guys, because today we're going to talk about ego and challenging your ego. But I wish there was more people in the world that were humble, because even when you pursue bodybuilding to elite levels, really, do we need to be overtaken by ego and think that we're better than other people? I don't think that that is useful for anyone. Now, when we talk about ego, what even is that? It's often associated as being a negative, right? So you can say, fucking hell, that person's very egotistical. But do we know what the ego actually is? Now, when we look at ego, this can be certainly utilized, particularly as bodybuilders, because essentially it is your level of self-importance. So we can utilize that because at times as a bodybuilder, we're going to need to put ourselves first. We're going to need to prioritize what we need to do to be the best bodybuilder possible, particularly if you're looking to progress through the sport or progress through different phases as a lifestyle client. We need to find those priorities, and we are going to need to be on that priority list near the top most of the time to enable us to do what we need to do to achieve our goals. But when ego takes over, it can be a very detrimental place to be, particularly as competitors. You can end up, you see it on social media a lot. I've done this, I've done that, I've trained really hard, I'm going to war, all of these things. What is that actually for? Now, my advice is if you are a coach in the space, potentially you will attract people that are of a similar nature. But if you're looking to genuinely help people, maybe help people start out on their fitness journey, perhaps bring it down a peg or two and relate to people that have not even been in a gym, right? I used to work in a gym, and I always remember a person that came in to join, and They were terrified. It took them 8 months to walk through the front doors of the gym. And there's a reason for that, because they were worried about what other people would think. And also that there would be people in there that are leading with ego in a negative way. And for me, certainly, I feel like challenging your ego can really, really help to check in with yourself, which of course is our topic today. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can challenge our ego. Now, I'm aware that you need to be in a certain spot in life to be able to challenge your ego, because we can really, really be affected when the ego hits in the ways that I'm talking about. So more of a negative light. However, if your ego raises and you're able to challenge it and understand why it is kicked in, this can be a super sick journey, exploration, however we want to label it. And I'm going to share with you an experience that happened to me recently. So this episode for sure is going to be lots and lots of experiences and talking about experiences that I've had with, like I say, my people, but also I'm hoping to relate as to giving examples for you to go, oh, okay, I understand what you mean. Because if I talk about you should be challenging your ego, do we really know what that means? And I didn't really understand what that meant until recently. So let me share with you an example. Now, this also does feed into elements of imposter syndrome also. And why is it that we do have imposter syndrome, right? Because maybe we don't feel we're good enough, or we lack self-worth and self-value. And when I recently had my ego kick in, we had one of Matt's clients, a friend of ours, Dan, stay with us in Thailand. And what was great about this experience was that I could share this with Dan. And I feel like it was almost like we bonded during this time. And this is giving an example of how your ego kicking in and challenging it can benefit you. So maybe people outside of bodybuilding would think, what the hell is she on about? But I know you guys love these examples I give. And when you can relate, it's like, okay, I have these thought processes. This is completely normal as a bodybuilder. And even when we're talking about subjects that are of a deeper nature, I always want to bring that light-hearted vibe to it, because some of the things we do as bodybuilders are bloody bizarre, right? But to us, they're very, very normal. And so the scenario, what happened was one of our other friends was round, and he spoke about another one of our friends who said that cereal and yogurt, which is something Matt and I have most nights, is not really a bodybuilding food. So when this initially got said, I was like, I feel really unsettled here. And we're obviously in a social scenario, you know, it was overtaking my mind. Now, why was that? My ego kicked in massively here. And why was that? Because, and I realized this, because someone was questioning if I was a bodybuilder in my mind. Now, when we dig into this, right? Do I need to justify that I'm a real bodybuilder to anyone? Not really, no. But for a lot of my time as a bodybuilder, particularly the earlier days, I felt like I needed to earn the right to call myself a bodybuilder. For 5 years, over 5 years, till I won a show, I didn't tell people I competed. I tried to keep it quiet. I would change the subject. I didn't want anyone to know, because I didn't feel like I had earned the right to be a bodybuilder. And I realized this still stays with me even now. I have these moments of, I can do more. You know, there's other bodybuilders out there that are excelling or better than me, or all of these things. These thought processes do go through my mind at times, if I completely am honest with you guys. And I think this is something we will all share. So then my reaction to this, and this is where Dan came in clutch, because I overreacted massively. And I didn't like how I acted. I actually felt pretty embarrassed, because I didn't need to go off on a tangent about, well, most bodybuilders or lots of bodybuilders I know eat cereal, eat Greek yogurt. Why is it being questioned? And I wasn't happy with my behavior. And that's, again, being honest with you guys. This is something that I then afterwards went through my mind, and I then said to Matt separately, I don't want Dan seeing me like that. That's a guest in our house, and that's a client of yours. It's a friend of ours. I'm going to need to talk to Dan about this. I cannot let this rest. So Dan and I sat at the table, and it was like, I really felt my ego kick in then with what got said, and I apologized for my behavior. I've dug into why this happened, and I understand why, but you didn't need to see me act like that, because that's not me. It's not me. If you meet me, if you know me, I'm not, well, I'd like to say I'm not an angry person. I'm always trying to look for the good in scenarios. But what I needed to do was understand what the good in this scenario was. How could I learn from this? How could I grow? So I challenged my ego, right? So my ego has gone mental. It was like I was overtaken, like I'm possessed. It's like my whole world is crashing down. Someone's questioning that I'm a bodybuilder, that I'm a real bodybuilder. But actually, when we face something like this, guys, and I've spoken about this before, is it that that person doesn't really know about bodybuilding? Is it that they haven't heard about, what foods bodybuilders eat? Is it that maybe they don't understand it? So it's a place of miseducation or lack of education. Do I really need to allow that to question that I'm a real bodybuilder? No, I don't, but I did. And this all relates back to this coming from a place of I care so much about my own physique development, how I'm seen and viewed as a bodybuilder, as a podcaster, as a coach, as a person. I care how I'm portrayed and what people think. And there's that difference between, what people think in regards to something I'm doing with a good intention, as to if someone thinks bad of me for doing something good, that's the type of person I don't want to be around. However, if it's someone that said something that is to do with something I eat or wherever else, if I know that this aligns with my goals, I do not need to let that overcome me, right? But it did. So Dan and I sat and we spoke about it, and he said to me, which was fucking awesome, why do you think it raised your ego so much? And then we spoke about it. And this, again, is what I mean by finding your people. Is it often that we can sit and have a conversation of this nature with someone and it be through a place of mutual respect? Again, this is a question to you guys. Do you have people around you that challenge you, that ask you questions that are going to help you grow? And I would say a lot of my life, I haven't really had those people around, right? Because do people really fucking care about your growth? Do they? Maybe they say they do, but when we go back to actions speak louder than words, when words are said and people cheerlead you, and then you go against your word and they still cheerlead you, are they people that are going to help you grow? Are they people that are going to offer you elements of, you staying accountable to what you say, right? And Dan is one of those people. And this was a very cool exploration, because this then extended into something I'm going to share with you, an analogy that when telling my coach Tom about this scenario, and he gets it right, we're both raving lunatics in regards to being bodybuilders. We absolutely love bodybuilding and we share that. And the reason I say raving lunatics is because people would probably view us as that from an outside world. Sometimes the conversations we have, I think this would make literally no sense to people outside of bodybuilding. However, it makes sense to us. So I told him about this scenario. We spoke about he knows what I eat, right? So I even found myself saying, when we were talking about the cereal, I was like, it's not like I'm smashing Cocoa Pops or Rice Krispies. I'm eating shredded wheat. I'm having 𝗴𝗂𝗶𝗁, so this is a good source of fiber. And then I found myself going off on these tangents. Then I was like, hold on a minute. doesn't matter if I am having Cocoa Pops, if that aligns with my goals and my allowance of, you know, being able to include these foods. But there was still those elements of I was still trying to justify it as I was explaining the situation to Tom. And he was like, look, you don't need to prove to me that you're a bodybuilder. We know you're a bodybuilder, but you still have elements of self-value, imposter syndrome, whatever that may be. And that's my own, you know, it's something I need to work on for sure. And that's okay, you know. Now, we then went on to talking about an analogy that he shared with me, which was super, super cool. He actually said to me, and I hope I get this story right. He said to me, have you heard about the donkey and the tiger? And I was like, no. And essentially, let me try and share this story because it's stuck with me ever since. So there was a donkey and a tiger, and they went for a walk, and they came to a cliff edge, and they looked at the sea. And the tiger said, the sea is lovely and blue. And the donkey said, the sea is red. And the tiger said, no, it's not. Everybody knows it's blue. The donkey said, it's red. They went back and forth. So then they went to the lion, the head of the animal kingdom. And the tiger said, the donkey is saying the water is red, but we all know it's blue. So the lion, the head of the animal kingdom, said, tiger, you're being sent to animal jail. Donkey, you were right. The donkey ran off to tell everyone, tell all of his friends, I was right. The tiger got put in animal prison for a year. He then went back to the lion after that year and said, why did you put me in prison? The donkey was lying. We all know the water is blue. And the lion said, because you wasted my time telling me about a donkey. And that has stuck with me ever since. And I say to Matt, when, you know, certain things come up or whatever, we don't need to entertain donkeys. And I know that some of you guys listening are going to love that analogy. And it's something I really wanted to share on this one because Tom comes out with these analogies and stories and they stick with me. And it's very, very cool to share because that then transfers into how many different areas of life, right? We are constantly thrown things at us in life, particularly, you know, social media. When you see people doing reels about don't eat this or this is bad or demonizing things, what does that actually do to help educate our community? Fuck all. But what it does do is demonize people and make people feel a certain way. And these people, in my mind now, are donkeys. We do not need to entertain this. So in that scenario of challenging my own ego and what got said, do I need to let that be detrimental to myself? No. And can I learn from it? Yes. So I'm extremely grateful for being able to challenge my ego and for that scenario. And like I said, I did feel embarrassed. But speaking with Dan and being able to be vulnerable and say, look, that wasn't on, this is why, and we spoke about it, it was super, super cool. And I'm actually very, very grateful that it happened for sure. Because now when things get said and it questions maybe my morals or my bodybuilding or whatever that may be, I can nip that in the bud if my ego kicks in quicker, or the ego can kick in and I can challenge it because it's only from a place of trying to do my best for sure. So when you guys come across things, you know, if someone makes a comment or you see something on Instagram that is against what you're doing, it's certainly a thought process to go, okay, so am I doing something that aligns with my goals, with my morals as a person? If the answer is yes, then we need to try and cut out that external noise as much as possible, which is not easy, right? But changing our thought processes helps us evolve as people. So being able to have the right influence around us, whether that be friendships, social media, whatever that may be, it's going to be hugely impactful onto how you view yourself. And being able to be objective when things occur is super, super important here. And, you know, like I said right at the start, life is tough. Challenges are thrown at us. And sometimes we think, why are all of these things happening to me? Why is everything coming my way? You know, I know people where it's one challenge into another challenge into another challenge. And it's like, you know, for those people, for myself, when this was happening in my life through certain periods of time, it's like, why is this happening to me? But if we can look at opportunities to grow and be open-minded and to try and see what we can learn from every challenge we face, every scenario we face, and trying to self-reflect at times, you know, we all make mistakes, but it's what we do after that. It's our intention, trying to reevaluate. Could we have come across in a different way? Could we potentially speak to people that have maybe been upset or offended by what we've said and understand what they took it as? Because like I've mentioned already today, we all take things in different ways. I can say one thing to you and one thing to someone else, exactly the same thing, but it's read in completely different ways. But remember that intention, guys, because when we act with self-respect and a strong moral compass, that gains respect from other people. If we strive for popularity and we do certain things, act in certain ways to be in with the crowd, or, you know, try and amend our actual true authentic self, yes, it can last for a little bit of time, right? I've done it myself, for sure. 100%. I've done this multiple times. But what I've learned myself, again, you know, this episode is not for me to say this is how you should do things, more of, you know, reflections on how I've dealt with certain scenarios. But when I've amended myself to suit other people, trust me, it's ended in me being alone again, me questioning myself, me not understanding why people don't like me for who I am. And the more and more I can actually be myself, the more and more people are gravitating towards me, where I can be in their company and literally be completely myself. And this then transfers into, I touched on this earlier, about when we're looking to spend our life with someone, when we are in a relationship, there's some super important things that I want to talk about today, about checking in with yourself so that you're able to be in a functional, loving relationship. So having that value there, what do you bring to the relationship and what are you passionate about? So I'm going to talk about examples of being a bodybuilder, right? So if you're a bodybuilder, whether you compete, whether you do this as a lifestyle, whatever version of bodybuilding is you, that's part of you. Now, if you enjoy this lifestyle, if this is really something you want to pursue, then this can come with difficult conversations, being able to prioritize yourself. If this is a new venture of yours, can be difficult, because sometimes people around you will feel like your priority list has changed, right? So once upon a time, they were at the top of your priority list. And if you go into something like a prep as a good example, a very good example, suddenly your priority list is getting everything done for your prep. And then potentially the people around you are maybe going to feel lower on that priority list. And it's certainly something that I did, you know, and to a certain degree, guys, if you're committing to a contest prep, you're going to need to, if you want to have functional relationships and for those relationships to continue as you go through something like a contest prep, you're going to need to be open and honest with those people around you to say, look, this is what I need to do for my prep, and this is what I need to do to be able to achieve getting to stage. This doesn't mean I don't love you. This doesn't mean you're not a priority, but right now I'm going to need to focus on what I need to do to get to stage. Now, let me tell you, it takes a certain person to be able to support that. And I'm incredibly lucky to have found Matt, because he literally puts me first when I'm in a prep. And he knows that for the last 6 to 8 weeks, you know, I'm not fully there in regards to that emotional readiness. You know, we're not having conversations that are particularly functional outside of a prep, right? So it's going to be me thinking, am I ready for stage? I want to talk about, you know, if my scale weight has gone up, or if I feel like I'm ready, or is this pose, am I hitting this pose right? Have I got my food sorted for the day? What do we need to do to align our schedules? All of these things. And it might be that we don't have time for our normal downtime together. That doesn't mean I don't love him, but he's putting me as his priority while I prioritize a prep. And like I say, it takes a special kind of person for that to not build resentment. They need to fucking love you and understand how important it is to you, and not throw this back in your face. Because like I said earlier about resentment, this will build resentment. And what does that do? That destroys relationships. And as I said, you know, this can be rekindled, this can be changed. You can talk about it, you can work it out, you can come together, but you're going to need to check in with yourself to be able to go, look, I can't be my normal contribution to our relationship right now, because this goal essentially is more important to me right now. That also takes a level of self-actualization that I feel many competitors potentially don't have. And again, this is not me critiquing anyone, but it's for me to thought provoke for you guys listening. If you're in a prep and you're trying to do so many different things, and you've got your other half trying to, you know, be higher on that priority list when you cannot do everything, it can cause problems, and you need to take ownership for that. And I said to Matt, you know, when I went into the prep, this is me now for 10 months. And that doesn't mean that we don't spend pockets of time together and I can't do things with him. But if I'm in prep, I'm in prep. It's serious to me. That doesn't mean he's not serious to me. But if you're a competitor and you're looking to progress in the sport, if you're looking to gain success in the sport, this is where it comes in, guys, that it's a selfish sport. But in my mind, and again, maybe this isn't how other people would think of it, but in my mind, if you're with a partner and they see this is important to you, then you are their priority for that period of time while you prioritize something that's incredibly important. And then off the back of the show, I would never, ever feel the need to make it up to Matt. What I would do is, when I'm feeling better, healthier, and I've got more time, is make new memories. Because another thing that we can do during this time, during a prep, is take ownership for this, but also take ownership that you can still do things together. It doesn't mean that life stops. So we will go for our walks to get my steps in. Matt will come to the gym and watch me pose. Matt will be at the gym and maybe spot me. He can be there when I have my prep meals. It doesn't matter what we're eating. What matters is that we're together. So it's a thought process for you guys to take ownership. You know, if your partner is a non-bodybuilder, they don't have to eat what you're eating. They don't need to suffer with you. What needs to happen is that you both communicate and come together as a partnership. Because if you're intending on spending your life with someone, your goals should be just as important to them as they are you, and likewise. Because what is a partnership, right? A partnership is two people that at times, you know, if Matt's pursuing something, I will be there 100%. If I'm pursuing a prep, he will be there 100%. It's about this back and forth so that you're together as one. And at times, one of you needs to be prioritized because you're doing something you're passionate about, or a challenge arises. And in my mind, this is the perfect formula for a relationship based on communication and value. Because this is what we want, right? We want to be equal in a relationship. We both want to feel we play our parts, but that comes with taking ownership and understanding the value you bring, but also understanding when, if you're doing something like a contest prep, that you can't do everything. If you are pursuing this sport, like I say, It's not something you can do half-assed, because if you leave things to chance and then you do not get a placing, or you do not stand on stage feeling that you have done your best, it's not a nice feeling. And I would also argue to say, if you're stepping on stage and you've maybe not given it your all in off season and in prep, why are you doing it? Could you not elongate your goal? Could you potentially choose something else that fits better within your lifestyle? Because for me personally, there's no worse feeling when you stand on stage and you could have done more. Again, that's my own personal feeling, and that may be not what other people think, and that is fine. We all have different ways of looking at it, but it's super important that you understand what your expectations are. And I'll take you back to the start, that your actions, they lead. What you say you're going to do, what you're going to pour into bodybuilding, let's actually put those words into action. Because we can all say shit, right? We can all say, I'm going to do a prep, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But how about actions come before those words, right? And be accountable to yourself. So the words that you say, they don't have to be words that you externalize. If you tell yourself you're going to do something, do it. Because otherwise, again, you are devaluing yourself, because you're constantly telling yourself you're going to do something, but you're never following through. And bodybuilding is not an easy choice. It's probably one of the hardest sports available in regards to the commitment it takes. It's a day in, day out. And yes, there's different versions of it, right? You know, maybe your goal is to step on stage. Fine. That was my goal at the start. I wanted to step on stage. However, I did everything to the plan because it was important to me. There's no way, like I've said, I'm stepping on stage knowing that I've missed the mark in any of the plans that I've been delivered. What we can do is progress and understand more about things like recovery and stress management, which is, for me, wasn't spoken about as much at the start. And that's something I've learned. But the plan that was delivered, the nutrition, the training, everything I needed to do, the posing, that was all done, because this is important if you are representing yourself and your coach on stage. And this is something I actually spoke about on my social media yesterday. I put some stories out, and the reason I'm going to mention it today is this aligns with being able to understand where you're at as a person. And a lot of people replied to these stories, and I feel like certainly it's something that can be spoken about and explored within today's topic of checking in with yourself. So what are your expectations and your goals in the sport, or even as a lifestyle client? What are you looking to achieve? Now, for me, I've had people that I've consulted with, and I've told them they're not ready to do a prep. And that's resulted in them not taking up coaching with me. So my promise as a coach is that I want to align with all of my clients' expectations. So if someone's telling me they want to do a prep, but they're already struggling with their relationship with food, or sticking to a basic diet, or, you know, levels of commitment don't align with their lifestyle, etc., etc. There's lots of examples. I'm not going to take them through a prep. Also, if they're doing it from a place of potentially trauma or certain things going on, I know what a prep entails. And if I'm prepping someone, I'm prepping someone. So if we're looking to really hit that stage in that condition that we're all striving for, that stage condition, if someone is not ready to prep, what's that going to look like off the back of the show? Because my ethos as a coach, and as anyone talking about prep, is that we need to consider what happens off the back of the show. So let's put it, you know, let's put it out there. Really, anyone can do a prep, anyone can diet. Come at me if you want to for saying that, but really, anyone can. However, can people handle the post-show period? particularly if the expectation is I'm going to go into a show and I'm going to win. If you're not in a spot to do a prep and then you try and do it, you muddle your way through, you still step on stage anyway, and you don't get a place in that you think that you're going to get, post-show, I can almost guarantee is going to be fucking tough. And I don't want that on my conscience. So it's certainly something as coaches we need to consider when we're taking someone through a diet, a prep, anything. We need to align with their expectations. Now, I am very, very lucky with the clients that I have. Honestly, my client base, I cannot thank enough for their trust in me. And that's because I can challenge them, I can be honest with them, and they are receptive. And yes, clients have left before because we're not the right match, but that's okay. And I urge any coaches listening, if you do not match with a client for whatever reason, if they don't do well with your coaching style, if they're not able to follow the plan, if there's any, lack of honesty or openness, or you feel on edge, or you feel negative about the relationship, something needs to be done, because that is going to also feed into our topic today, checking in with yourself. I know that can monopolize a lot of your time worrying if you're going to say something wrong on a check-in, or if you're going to upset someone. But from the start, it's important, guys, if you're looking to go down this route of coaching, or you already coach, be open, be honest. If someone says to you, I want to do a prep, and you can see there's red flags, you can see they're not ready, go with your intuition, because let me tell you, it will bite you in the fucking arse, or that post-show period is going to fuck them up. And that is not fair on either of you. Now, that's not me talking for all coaches, right? Everyone has a different way of coaching, different morals, different values. Again, everyone's different. It's not for me to, I'm never here to slag people off or call people out. What I am here to do is talk about what I believe is coaching. And like I say, I'm extremely lucky with my clients, and all of them listen to the podcast. All of them are so receptive when we dig into many, many aspects beyond a physique. My clients are not just a physique to me. These people are people. They're humans with emotions, with pasts, with goals and ambitions. And it's my job to be inside their head as much as possible. It's my job to offer education, but also to be able to guide and support, not from a place of judgment, from a place of helping and empowering, and being able to lead them to their goals, because that's what is always at the forefront of my mind, to help my clients progress and lead into their goals, but also be realistic with that. So you guys listening, honestly, my job is the absolute best job in the whole world. And this is where I say, any coaches listening, get this vibe with your clients, understand why you want to be a coach, what your morals are, what you stand for, what your mission statement is, and pursue that, because then your job can be enjoyable and you can actually help people grow. And this also relates back to starting the podcast. And I'm going to give a shout out to Chelsea, one of my USA listeners. Chelsea was the third person to call me mom. I think you say mom, mom. And ever since, I speak to many American people that listen to the podcast or guests. And when people call me mom, I'm like, this is super cool, because it's American, and yeah, things like that I think are super cool. Anyway, Chelsea and Emily, who listens to the podcast, both of you in the last week have messaged to say that you've listened to many podcasts and this is the best bodybuilding podcast. And Tamara also said this just the other day. And this truly means everything to me. And if I think about this logically, why am I at this position in life where the podcast is doing very well? Why am I able to get the guests I have on? Why am I able to have listeners say that this is the best bodybuilding podcast they've ever heard? Because I stuck to my words and I stuck to them with actions. like I say, I took over 6 months to get ready to even launch the podcast. I got my artwork designed, I got my intro and outro, I got my first few guests lined up. This was like a job. This was like I was, this was everything to me, and it still is everything to me. And I'm sure you guys will pick up on that. But this aligns with, I've needed to continue checking in with, what is my mission from doing a podcast? And this, guys, is where we can translate this to any area of life. What are we trying to achieve in life? And do our actions align with our goals? Because we can all say things, but we need to put something behind those words in order to achieve and grow as people. And that is super, super important for sure. And then we give off a different vibe. We give off a completely different energy, and the universe works to attract people to that. And it's super cool to share these things with you today, guys, because I know from the messages that you guys send me and the back and forth, when I say thank you for sharing the podcast on Instagram or messaging me, or when I send one of you guys a voice note and you say, I can't believe you voice noted me, I'm like, whoa, what? Like, this is wild, because I'm now living my dreams as reality, because I've always checked in with myself. I made a promise to you guys, and I will never break that. Today's episode is a bonus episode, because you get your episode every Monday without fail. And then we have our bonus episodes. If something happens, or I'm able to share an experience, or maybe I can get some guests on as a little bonus episode, I would always try and pursue that as much as possible for you guys. And I would always extend the invite that I give on the solo episodes and I mention across the podcast is, if you ever have any topic ideas, anything you want me to expand on, anything I can deliver you guys, it's always really, really important for me to be able to give you as much education and empowerment as I can, because that is my role as your podcast host. I am here to support you guys, and I cannot thank you enough for sharing the podcast with your friends, for tuning in every week. And we have the exciting relaunch on February the 12th, which I'm so excited to share this with you guys, but I'm not going to tell you what that involves. However, I will give you the cliffhanger. And also on Sunday, the 4th of February, we have the just over 4-hour episodes come into your ears. Now, you don't know what the topic is, but you will soon. Let me tell you, this is an episode. Whoa, 11 guests on this one. And, the guests, again, continue to get better and better. And we're in the midst of our first part of the mental health series, and we will be launching on the 12th of February with the relaunch of the podcast. We will be going into part 2 of the mental health series, and we are going to be digging deeper on that one. So very, very excited for that to continue. And there is so many plans this year, guys, so many plans. I've already got all of the episodes ready all the way up until April. And I'm going to continue working my ass off for you guys to deliver you as much as possible. So any messages, any suggestions, or anything you want me to cover, please do let me know. But I hope you enjoyed this episode today, guys. And remember, don't listen to donkeys. I will speak to you real soon. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.